Good morning, everyone. Buenos días a todos. Those who prefer to listen in Spanish can join the live translation of the conference by clicking on the circle that you will find located in the lower left part of the screen and choosing that language. Quienes hablan español pueden escuchar la traducción en vivo de la conferencia haciendo clic en el círculo de interpretación ubicado en la parte baja izquierda de la pantalla y elegir su idioma. Muchas gracias. Thank you. Here to welcome all of you, our distinguished co-moderator, Lance J. Brown, FAIA, Advisory Board Member of the New York City Architecture Biennial, and also President, Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization.
Thank you, Natalia. Good morning and welcome everyone, or welcome back, hopefully, to many of you. New York City Architecture Biennial is new this year, and we're glad that you found us and you're listening in. We're a non-for-profit 503c3 organization that will recognize and exhibit the work and ideas of talented people in architecture, urban design, landscape, environmental, and other design disciplines. Our goals are to promote innovative, sustainable design and to support gender and racial equality around the world. To do this, we exhibit the work of emerging and renowned architects and urban designers, landscape architects, environmental and other design professionals. We provide a platform within which we can consider design creativity. We connect, inform, and support the work of design professionals. We encourage training to achieve gender and racial equality for leadership positions within the architectural, urbanism, and design agencies. We coordinate with public and private organizations to support women and racial diversity in architecture and urbanism. And we encourage the use of construction materials and methods to ensure sustainable design. Most importantly, we have an overarching commitment to collaborate with others to accomplish 5 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. More will be said about that. Last night, we presented the New York City Architecture Biennial as an organization and goals more in depth. You can find last night's lecture on the New York City Architecture Biennial website 2020 Conference Archive. And there you will find the Sustainable Development Goals and educational programs described. We would again like to thank our partners, the Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization, the BIM Academy, Driven by Design, Red Ball, the Institute for Biodigital Architecture and Genetics, and the International University of Catalunya in Barcelona. Our sponsors include JP Capizzi Law Office, Zoho Cloud Solutions, Dezeen, Arc News Now, the Commission Project, the Washington Center, Carolina, an OFS company, and OFS, which is providing today their fabulous showroom at 1250 Broadway to broadcast the conference, and out the window of which you can see New York's famous Flatiron Building. Last, we'd like to acknowledge the institutions that promoted our event, the AIA New York chapter and their October program, Pratt Institute, Columbia University, the New Jersey Institute of Technology, the New York Institute of Technology, and the ACSA, the National Association of Collegiate Schools of Architecture in the US, and the New York State Energy and Research and Development Authority, NYSERDA, and the magazines, the Monday Morning Quarterback, Architects Newspaper, ArchiNext New York Architectural Diary, and Interior Design Magazine. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce my good friend and co-moderator, Rick Bell, advisory board member of the New York City Architectural Biennial and faculty member of Columbia University's Center for Buildings, Infrastructure, and Public Space. Good morning, Rick.
Morning, Wes. Thank you. And I'm delighted to be here today to present my friend and colleague, Maria Hurtado de Mendoza, whose work and whose teaching exemplify the goals of the New York City Architecture Biennial. Those listening today can connect with us all by Zoom through the chat room, and you can ask questions of the speaker through the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Hello, Maria. I'd say, Maria, it's been way too long since we've had the chance to be in the same place. I think maybe it would be a good time to start sharing your screen, if you'd like, while I do a very brief introduction of your work.
Okay.
Thank you. Maria Hurtado de Mendoza is an international award-winning architect and the co-founder of the Estudio Entresitio. She's an associate professor of architecture at the New Jersey Institute of Technology in Newark, New Jersey, where we taught a studio together a long time ago. I don't even want to remember how long ago that was. Maria has also taught in Madrid at the School of Architecture at SAM and at Cornell University. She was awarded the Spanish Academy Rome Prize for Architecture in 1996, I think. Yeah, 1996. Her office, Estudio Entresitio, is based in Madrid and New York. The practice is invested in the material actualization of the architectural concept and has extensive building experience with an emphasis on public work. The built work of the studio has received more than 50 awards and honorable mentions, and the projects have been successful in more than 20 competitions. The firm participated 3 times in the Biennial Española de Arquitectura y Urbanismo and also in the Ibo-American Biennial of Architecture, and I think 3 times in the Venice Biennale. Welcome again, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Rick. And thank you, Lance, both of you, for having me here today. It's kind of interesting because you both really represent New York City to me. If I think of New York, you are the definition of inclusion made person, made architect. Actually, I will never forget that when I arrived to New York with a teaching position at NJIT, this was like 7 years ago, you welcomed me and you made AIA New York my home, and I really feel like I belonged. So thank you so very much for that. And also for inviting, for this invitation to share ideas. I think that we are going to start presenting a video to introduce the office and Estudio Entresitio as a team. So the video could be playing now.
Between, as the aim of looking and paying attention to the opportunities that appear on the edges, as the area that arises when you question what is established in the discipline of architecture, push the boundaries, blur the limits, and look for new ways of connecting things. Our Madrid office is located in the city center, an urban practice that allows the team to have an easy commute and be surrounded by museums, galleries, stores, and all the city life, all of which ends up reflecting in the way we think architecture. As a city, Madrid expresses perfectly that quality of in-betweenness our office seeks. The geographical center of Spain, it is a pole that attracts people from all over the country and the globe. Similar to New York City, although less spectacular scale-wise, it acts as a melting pot of cultures, ideas, and points of view. A shared homeland, as Quevedo called it, a place where the local and the global thrive in harmony, a city no one and everyone is from. The office was founded by María Hurtado de Mendoza and César Jiménez de Tejada in 1993 after meeting at architecture school. They are currently joined by Pepe, Álvar, Eduardo, María, Pello, Carlos, and Borja. But even though that is a team nowadays, Entre Sitio also is Julián, Ana, Laura, Lucía, Nieves, Laura, Enrique, Ana, Jorge, Irene, Camila, Vidal, Raquel, Matías, Verena, Cristina, Laura, Carolina, Jorge, Stefan, Pablo, Teresa, Caroline, Laura, Irene, Vincent, Fabrice, Philippe, Clara, Andoce, Marco, Miguel, Mía, Phoebe, Yu, Alejandro, María, Edurne, Alejandro, Mar, Carolina, Lucía, Belén, Adriana, Hanna, Nobu, Vitoria, as well as all the wonderful collaborators we are lucky to work with on a daily basis. Our work seeks material abstraction in defining unique spaces to inhabit. Technical rigor and attention to program support the translation of conceptual ideas into non-start and contemporary buildings. We're a spatial practice with a sheer will to build architecture. The working process is very fluid and non-hierarchical, an attitude supported by the configuration of the space we work in. We sit all around a big table that, due to the increasing size of the office, has currently become a little small, pushing César and Maria out of it. We might need to reconfigure it soon. A doorless office, except for the one in the toilet. What might seem for some as lack of privacy, it actually translates into a very easy communication between all the members of the team, since we know all the time what is going on in the office and what meetings are taking place. Although it sometimes translates into people taking calls on the balcony or the aforementioned toilet. Our creative process is non-linear. A common saying around here is that each one is better at doing that they enjoy. There are not preset roles or titles in the studio, and we don't just stick to one skill or way of doing architecture, but embrace all the diverse options the team brings to the table. We sketch by hand in AutoCAD, check spaces in Rhino, tinker with Grasshopper for complex patterns, think through models, render videos, do on-site collages, build a project in Revit, visiting on Enscape, paint with watercolors, supervise the construction site, check the works, draw again, start and repeat, iterate, think, dream, build. Projects range from standalone houses to public dwellings, healthcare centers, social and transportation hubs, and museums. But no matter what we are designing, the principles are usually the same. How can we make it better for the user? How can everyone who uses our building feel welcome in it as we feel welcome in Madrid? What is the extra thing that we are providing when solving the problem? We spend a lot of our day discussing ideas, sharing details, talking about what we do, looking to things upside down, paying as much attention to the conceptual metaphor that starts the project as to the ceramic tiling detail on the upstairs bathroom floor. Entre Sitio is what we've built and what we've dreamt of building, but it's mostly the relationships that have been forged between team members, users, and cities a long time, a group that has become like family while trying to create unexpected connections and looking for new ways of looking at architecture.
Maria, you
Hello.
can start. Yes.
The floor is mine.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, can you hear my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Fabulous. Okay, I need to move something around here. So hello, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the video. We had such a great fun producing it. And I also hope you're all doing well. I will start using the plural now. I always speak in the name of Estudio Entre Sitio, which is my team, as you saw, my office, my life, as no man is an island, right? Like the poet said a long time ago. For us, it is kind of important, although it's been said in the video, we will repeat that we, Entre Sitio, are a spatial practice, meaning that the ultimate goal of our work is the conception and the construction of architectural space. We do have the will to build architecture, and we are interested in the journey between conceptual thinking and the spatial consequences in the built environment. So today, our point is to share our understanding of what social inclusion is and how does it translate into the physical architectural spaces. We have selected 10 ideas that are recurring in our work, ideas that are somehow tools to catalyze social inclusion in what we build. Let's start with this one, scaleless. Scaleless as in no clearly defined scale, which paradoxically translates into scalar, or could translate into scalar integration with the context. The relationship between coexistence of scales and scalar ambiguity, on the other hand, tries to establish the dialogue that occurs on the historic city by the accumulation of different situations throughout time. In this case, urban housing becomes a reference building that assumes the role of qualifying the urban fabric that was once before qualified by other uses, as we all know. We transformed the given volume of a block into something different. This is the exact same number of square feet, but with a larger silhouette, a kind of non-mimetic contextual approach. We enjoy working around the relationship between ordinary and extraordinary. In this housing tower, for example, enabling the coexistence of day-to-day situations, such as the regular house window size, with the extraordinary of its placement. which gets rid of known competitive schemes. Over the horizontal grid, windows are inserted, trying to not reveal the different floor levels. Program is not differentiate either in the envelope. So there is a certain ambiguity in scale. Big and small coexist, besides what cannot be understood, nor big or small. Because it is true that size matters, but small, medium, large, extra large can coexist. They have to coexist. We actually propose to think every project from the perspective of the body, the room, the building, and the neighborhood. Housing units in this project are interlaced in plan, and duplex in the plinth are also interlaced in section. They have two versatile spaces, one upstairs and another one downstairs, that cross in section facing opposite facades, and that are able to be used, for example, as living rooms and bedrooms, or offices and working spaces. A funny thing here, maybe not, is that your upstairs neighbor is also your downstairs neighbor, as you see in the model. Flexibility of uses is the consequence. However, the design intention is the user's freedom. In thinking of programming space, if there is no a prioristic approach, everyone can make it their own. One does not recognize it as something predetermined that is being imposed. It has no political rule, so to speak. Architecture provokes and facilitates, and it becomes instrumental. Let's think now about this duality, the inside out versus outside in, when starting a project. Because another important aspect of design research of our practice is on method. It has to do with how we do architecture and what is the support for our thinking during that process. In relationship to a given context, we seek for clues that operates from outside in, that is context-driven approaches, or sometimes the site is either too flat or diffuse or undetermined. So that requires an approach from inside out, a kind of bottom-up configuration with aggregation logics. Going back to the question of scale, this method applies both for large or small buildings. For example, on the upper left, we have the Museum of Memory in Bogota, and right below a clinic. On the right corner, on the top, we have a family house, and then underneath a sport infrastructure. So these two projects have in common a bottom-up configuration upon an underlying structure. That is how we like to call it. The grain of the program determines the configuration. That means that the room is the one that rules at this point. For the museum, it translates into an aggregation of components that are equal but also different, that acquires an identity of its own. As well, for the clinic inside space, the definition of the so-called rooms established a public realm in continuity. Circulation weaves the waiting room, the outdoor room, the exam room, and so on. Light and comfort for the healing. And now we look at dispositions that are closely related to site conditions, where rules that operates from outside in are predominant. Like in this family house, it is long and narrow for the long and narrow site. It's upside down configuration for the slope, filters and permeability for privacy while breathing, and so on. And here, the extended infrastructure for the extends waterfront in Mallorca. It is hard to talk about a building as a recognizable piece here. At least in the large scale view, it reads more like a multiplication of the site, all degrees of interiority in continuity, a project with no doors, no barriers, like a neighborhood. If we think about oversizing, although it is probably the reason why we are not successful in many of the competitions we do, this one time, it was the reason for us to win. This is the section for the competition entry for the Museum of Memory of Bogota, about to be built in Bogota, in collaboration with Pacheco Estudio de Arquitectura. We promote the oversizing of the public spaces, a strict compliance. On the one hand, we do a very strict compliance with the required programs, and then we enhance the generosity in the connective tissue. In this case, through the sectional thinking, the open public space on the ground floor as a public forum. It is an 8-meter high ground floor that becomes a shade and also an umbrella for the users, and the city percolating seamlessly throughout. But we can also oversize the verticality. Although working at high levels of abstraction, sometimes the architectural response can become a clear presence. And we embrace that opportunity when it comes. We do. Projector is a vertical movie theater, but is more than that too. It is intended as a projective device, a vertical public space through which the viewer travels the entire building, and seeing a movie becomes an opportunity to discover all the rest of the areas of the program along the tour. Altogether, the approach produces a decomposed building where theater halls are identified from various points of the city and produce multi-level urban balconies. In this span between camouflage and identity, we enjoy Gombrich's words when he talks about the quote, marks or badges that make something conspicuous, as in illustrious or visible or outstanding. Another public space, this time for a university, also in Bogota, together with Pacheco's office as the movie theater before. Oversizing circulation here, programming circulation, redundancy in circulation. This is a project of horizontal plates, and the underside of those plates are the space-making elements. There's no emphasis at all on in the vertical. One of those context-driven projects that takes the movement of the user as the driving force. If we speak about no hierarchy, we can see that similar to what we saw in the housing tower at the beginning, there is an intended ambiguity in the definition of front and back of a building as an urban object, also avoiding a kind of big difference between left and right. The building is perceived as a living environment. From all sides, you could arrive from all sides you could arrive from. For the museum, a building mass with no clear front or back as well, that also avoids frontality. All the ways to approach are the right way, are the right one. Formal autonomy is most certainly enhanced by its dimension, by the fact that you can be and recognize yourself being in and out, on and under, hopefully arriving to that quote unquote difficult whole that Venturi talk about in Complexity and Contradiction, and that we always pursue. At a smaller urban scale, all sizes of these clinics are equal. There is no rear of the building, for example. Actually, the building relates to its surroundings on 5 sides of the box, including the 5th facade as a roofscape. In the meantime, the interior space is a collection of saddle rooms, all similar, all different, no labels, no biases, mutability. Formless is as in not being informed by a legible geometry. That is one interpretation. To fringe or flake the perimeter, something very extensive, with the ambition of becoming an infrastructure anchored to the edge of the site. From outside to inside, the idea is of, the will to cross, the duplicating of the ground floor, a kind of folding, doubling the opportunities for the public space to exist. But formless also as in having no appearance. We are interested in the potential of divesting of things. What means for architecture the lack of something? These kind of soft resignations of architecture. what means to be frameless or detailless. This is the roof of the house. Indeed, has no presence, not even from Google. The kind of camouflage we have been talking about to the extreme. But what about if we think of an endless space with no end, double circulations, like the acknowledgement of the place beyond and beyond, the dissolution of filters, of limits, filters. We see here inside the museum rooms a diagonal relationship between all of them in clear visual continuity. The space doesn't have an end. One is at the same time a bit overwhelmed, but also intrigued. The relationship between rooms, as intense as it is, does not compete with the spatial integrity of each one. Endless also as in the intuition of an outside, tensioning the space through the use of light. This museum works with the relationship between the one and the multiple, starting from the definition of a module based on the dimension of the typical exhibition room of 400 square meters, and the logic of aggregation through circulation. Redundancy in circulation, again, no obligation, no beginning or end, and something that is potentially an endless extension. This is a slightly unusual office space. This is the paradox. The program is very important, but once it is translated into space, it is not that important anymore, which means that for a certain functional program, we are interested in understanding what the spatial needs require, like in terms of lighting, ventilation, privacy, the static versus dynamic. And once that is understood, the space has a life of its own. We are interested in the, especially in this kind of double condition of enclosure and infinity of space, not having the certainty of where space begins and ends, and the simultaneous perception of the here and the there. But also, why not the coexistence of things like privacy and light, or the possibility of thickening the limits without density as a cushion, or a distance without detachment from the public streetscape. A fussy boundary that provides an atmospheric condition. And we also do embrace complexity and all the different layers of a project whenever it's needed. We are not afraid of that. So, program, detailing, construction, geometry, color, the perception. For example, in this case, this is a sport complex. It was an intense investigation in the blurring of what could be built. If we say we are trying to dissolve the image of the building, you may misunderstand that we are against buildings, but well, we hope that at this point, you know already how much we love them. But we believe that they can be more than just closed environments and can become places, like even conditions. Overlapping the different layers that intervene here, that one by one are very easy, are a very easy reason to understand, but however, when put together, become something more special. Here, this is the lattice, 2 square dual grids, one to the center of the square of the other. Now we are adding to the lattice the shapes of the pool and the court with their inevitable strict definition. However, only in plan, don't forget about that. They are only a line on the floor. Here we have lattice and courts and enclosures to the grid. The lattice and courts enclosures and the space frame projection to the grid. Now adding the frame supports to the grid. The resolution of the plan to the grid. This is the upper level. We see the outdoor in blue and how, for example, bikers and runners in the park can slope through and over the complex. And also how at the entrance level, to the grid. Now we see how pedestrians can also cross through the building, and the entrance becomes a new door to the park, a place of encounter. And the light presence of that complexity that gets dissolved into a new place. But you know, talking about architecture, we don't have to explain it all, right? Like, architecture does not need to be understood to be inclusive. There is some attraction for those things that are not revealed, the kind of secret codes, whatever is implicit or the connotative of architecture. And sometimes indications are not needed to understand, you know, where the tension of space leads you to. Or, for example, this is something we enjoyed a lot. This was a competition for housing, and it was called Dogfish. So one side of the building looked like a dog and another one for the fish, but only for those who knew, because otherwise you will see just a building. But couldn't it be great to know that you live in the eye of the fish, or that you live on the, you know, in the, or the dog's belly, second door to the right, for example. But also subliminal are the difference between a set of spaces, all similar but all different. The idea of variations with repetitions. In the clinic, there are no identical patios amongst the 14 of them due to material and structural reasons. And these differences don't belong entirely to subjectivity. The rules are only load-bearing walls and the outer shell are concrete and the rest is not, right? It's kind of a very simple rule, but we really let each patio to be however it needed to be, to, you know, according to the rules. A decision-making strategy based in process that is open to the surprise of which is not foreseen. Here, we believe it's a question of freedom in syntaxis. And this is how the building looks nowadays. Like, these are pictures from the 10th anniversary that we were invited, and we were so happy of understanding the freedom of appropriation that the users had done with the project. This maybe you know, kind of ambiguity in the definition of spaces that are, however, so easy to appropriate by anybody, and this is all that we have to say for today. We believe in architecture and architecture design as the natural field for considering inclusion. It has the potential to reach where other fields can't in making our living environment fair and happy places for all of us. Thank you very much.
Maria, thank you. Thank you for your remarks and for those amazing images. Thank you for the video that showed your office and the team, listing all the players, all the team members in the office. Extraordinary. What you've achieved is remarkable. I remember you saying at the Center for Architecture when you spoke there a decade ago or so that your studio wins in general 1 out of every 10 competitions. And then you said that you knew you were going to win the next one because you had not got a commission from the last 9. So statistically, it was obvious. One project back then that did win a commission for your office was a community health center in Madrid. It was the one in the Usera neighborhood that has seen, I'm sure, much use during the pandemic. It won many awards when it was completed in 2012, including, I think, the Best Healthcare Project of the Year from Arc Daily. Similarly, your social housing projects from recently in Cordoba, I think in 2017, to Toledo back a decade ago, cut new ground in bringing natural light and ventilation into public housing, creating homes that are attractive, inclusive, and sustainable. You noted somewhere that I remember you saying that your work since the firm's founding in 1993, quote, seeks material abstraction in defining unique spaces to inhabit, technical rigor and attention to program support, the translation of conceptual ideas into non-standard contemporary buildings. But today, seeing the images that you projected and hearing you describe them leads me to want to take the discussion beyond materiality and geometric explorations to see the, call them the overarching goals of creating places for people, combining the themes you presented, particularly the relation of inside out and outside in, along with, as you said, the lack of hierarchy, formlessness, scalelessness, simultaneity, complexity, and also the ability to appreciate space subliminally. It's really a pleasure to see such places, also in the context of your video, with its great chotis music, which I think should be sung. You quoted a poet, I'll quote one from Spain, who says, "They who sing scare away their woes." So I won't ask you to sing, but maybe at the end if there's time. You know, seeing the street shots in Madrid and brought me back to my first trip to your wonderful city, the city of public plazas and inspirational architecture that I made when I was 19 years old. That was another century. The talk in the video lead us all to see the city anew. So I can't thank you enough. It's now also my pleasure to have the privilege to introduce Natalia Valencia, who's the founder and the president of the New York City Architecture Biennial. Natalia is an architect who is originally from Argentina, who moved to the US to work with Cesar Pelli and Kevin Roach in New Haven. She subsequently moved to New York City about 10 years ago also, where she now continues her architectural career at Perkins Eastman. Natalia will be the moderator of the audience question and answer session with you, Maria, and thank you, Natalia, for the privilege of being part of this. To you, Natalia.
Okay, I was frozen for a minute. Thank you, Rick and Lance, for your assistance on founding this organization and for being the moderators of this event. And thank you to all our team who makes this event possible. We were not able to present them yesterday, given some issues we had, but we will at some point throughout the conference. Maria, it is our pleasure to come with your presence and being able to learn from your experiences. It is important to reflect in the different scales and how make that a project more inclusive and humane. So thank you for your amazing presentation and your video. We enjoyed it very much. I am also extremely glad to see that we have a very large audience which is very international, as this conference is international. We want to reach different parts of the world and extend what we learn here and learn from other places as well. So thank you all for being here with us. Okay, so now I have to read and listen to the public and read some questions that you have made in the Q&A. So I'm gonna start with Teresa. It says, do you have any residential buildings in New York City?
I wish. No, we wish. Well, we've been very close to having residential projects in New York. Actually, we the other person that was really like a mentor for me in New York, together with Rick and Lance, is Fernando Villa. He's an architect at Magnus Magnusson Architects, and we. You know, the first year I arrived to New York, he invited me to visit his office, and it was about to be Thanksgiving. And so I don't know how we start, you know, like chatting and talking about architecture. And then we end up deciding we were doing a competition together for a housing RFP. And we started that weekend. So the entire Thanksgiving weekend we were working. And the result of the competition was we ended second, and which probably meant that our project was the good one. Well, we always say that to feel better about second places in competitions.
Wow.
And we've been doing some other tryings with Fernando, but you know, like one day we are looking forward. Yes.
That's great. Okay,
I teach, however, I've been teaching housing at NJIT for several years, and well, so I'm familiar with the housing in New York.
Yeah, winning a project in New York is very difficult. So not
difficult
every
all over the world.
yes.
I'm afraid.
Yeah. So how does one reconcile the complexity of having buildings that are designed for inclusivity while being in a context that is a little bit a context that is within exclusivity? So
Yeah, no, I do understand the question. I mean, for example, we can talk about the sports port in Mallorca. One could understand that kind of infrastructure as something that is like, you know, elite driven, as in, you know, the boats are not something cheap. We know that, but it's also a spectacle. And what we are doing is opening the infrastructure to the city. So when you're walking on the, you know, along the waterfront, all of a sudden you're inside the club and, you know, the facility, and there are no doors. So now public is going to be welcome. They're going to be able to go through. So I think that sharing without mixing, right? Like, you know, like in the sense that it's not that we all need to do the same, but we can all enjoy the same space in different ways. That is what we thought for that project.
oh, thank you. So there is another one. It's coming in Spanish, so I'm going to translate while speaking. So currently, we talk about the concept of accessibility, cognitive accessibility, taking from the comprehension of the space and the design. How do you think, this is also in Spanish for you in the Q&A, how do you think that the project can be comprehensive around the users and the mental capacity?
Well, that is a very important point. We are strong believers in accessibility, like universal accessibility. There's no point of anymore of doing an architecture that is not. So maybe it was understood through the images that we presented that it's something we take care, you know, we take very seriously, and we hope that users will move freely without needing, you know, like the key would be, do they need the lettering, you know, do they need signs to know where they have to go, or maybe not, maybe it's just like it's the intuition and the tension of the space that will allow people to move freely through the building.
Okay, thank you. Here we have one. It says, did you find resistance from the public or from well, it's just in general from the public or from someone to do an inclusive architecture, that, you know, they said, oh, we want certain facade or certain things that are not inclusive, and how do you manage that, you know, if you confront that?
Well, it is true that people, I mean, humans tend to like what they know. And it is our job as architects to think of the unknown and present new possibilities that maybe have not been tested before. And it's, you know, it's possible to understand that maybe there are moments where the users or even your clients don't understand or don't agree, or maybe don't have the faith that you have on your proposition, or but usually time, proves you right. On the other hand, we have also realized with, in all these years of work, that we as architects, we are obliged to go beyond the needs of the users. Like if we only provide the users with what they think they need, we are not doing our job, because we are supposed to go beyond that, to project into the future. So what if we can project into the future ideas of inclusivity, of inclusion, even if we don't say.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to label things to make them happen. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question. But yeah, I hope so.
Thank you so much. I have another one here. What is your vision or outlook of the future for the topic of social inclusion? Future.
I think, yes, no, I absolutely understand the question. Well, this is interesting. We always think that we are doing all that we can, unless, and then we go on a trip. Like, for example, this summer, I went on a road trip with my brother through Europe, and we were like 3 weeks driving around like every city, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Denmark. It was fabulous. And then you arrive to a new place, to a new society, to a new way, to a different way of living, and you realize how far advanced they are in understanding inclusion and freedom in the city and the users, in the street, at every level. So I think that what we need to do is to travel more. This not right now. We are not allowed because of the pandemic, right? But hopefully we will be traveling back soon, very soon.
Well,
we need to broaden our horizons, definitely.
I think that's one thing that we're trying to make with this conference, is to make people travel to New York and learn from what we can listen. I'm glad that today we're translating this event, because we have many events in New York City, and now with the pandemic everybody can join, but not everybody can understand because they don't have the translation. So I think that's a blessing, encouraging others to do same, so we have more inclusive talks and questions from all over the world as well. We learn from each other. So it says, in the context of the pandemic, do you think that this is increasing the changes in terms of a more inclusive architecture? Is like the COVID, making it more inclusive or more exclusive, given the current condition?
Well, the fact that we need to be apart and so separate doesn't seem to be very inclusive to start with. But maybe we need to, we were trying to make the case with the presentation that to whatever idea of inclusivity, architecture needs to respond with architectural means, right, as spaces and all that. So that is why I say it's very hard for us to think of inclusion at this point where we are not able to go places. We only see ourselves on the screen, and there is a kind of new reality between us, but we are more interested in the physical space. Like, we are very keen on that, and we are really hoping the pandemic will go away very soon.
Agreed. So then we can travel more. Okay. Yes. So I have another question that is related to BIM, and I don't know if there is any benefit on this and relate BIM use in Madrid with inclusivity, or how it is used in that regard.
Well, for us, it's been a blessing. At the beginning of the fall, last fall, we, like a year ago, we decided that it was about time to bring our office to the Revit world, because we were very much AutoCAD driven. So the entire office took a course. It was pretty intense. I don't know, I think like twice a week, 4 hours altogether. So, you know, you saw in the video the table where we work. So we were all like 11 people sitting in that table and watching to the same screen, and the instructor. So from the younger to the older, like we were all doing the same course. It was so much fun. I mean, in our specific case, it helped us to have like a very interesting bonding opportunity. And since then, we just love Revit. It is a fabulous tool for communicating with the clients, and you know, it is very powerful. We are even a little bit scared, because we are, on the other hand, like physical models lovers. Like we do a lot of physical models and, you know, and hand drawings, and then we have this powerful tool and we love it too. So we are like twisted. We don't know what to do.
So here is like, I don't know if it's a question or a point about accessibility. It seems like more for, you know, creating accessible buildings for, you know, people with the disabilities, if that need to be almost unseen, that, you know, it need to be kind of hidden or not, or it can, you know, it should be shown.
Well, I think that universal accessibility will mean that buildings are 100% accessible, and they don't show it in the sense that it is normal that they are that way. So you don't have to notice, because everything is accessible. I'm not sure if I'm explaining myself well. Like it's not something to do like after, is the project is accessible. So everybody feel welcome. You don't have to decide if someone is coming this door or that door, because everybody can go everywhere. So I think that is the dream, right?
Of course, and this question also kind of complement the other one, and is talking about in terms of building code, would this is helping or not accessibility?
I think it is. I mean, I think that code is something that we always make fun of, you know, and we say, oh, the code, but the code is great. I mean, at least it's a checking point. Like if you comply, I mean, if you can, why not being able to comply with the code and doing good architecture at the same time? It's not an excuse for not doing the right thing. So
it helps.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes the interpretation of code is very close-minded, and that is something we don't like. I think that what we need is to do is to understand the reason why that or whatever rule exists, and then make that work. But, you know, like the following the code, like word by word, is not what we are thinking of. It's more like understanding the intention.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So here's another one about climate change. It says, how does climate change impact your views on planning new structures and the building environment?
We have, you know, in the last few years, we've been working a lot in Bogota, well, in Colombia, and also in you know, Madrid. We could say we have kind of Mallorca, with a benign climate. Sorry. So actually, we have to admit that it was pretty easy for us to develop a very sustainable environment in terms of energy, because the situation is not as extreme as it is, for example, in New York, where you have, you know, like all that heat in summer and humidity. And so it is true that it's not as complicated for everybody to be aware of
the climate change.
Of the climate change. But it is the theme. I'm absolutely all for considering, sure.
Of course. Well, thank you very much. That we cannot make more questions. We're running out of time. So I let Lance conclude uh, the the lecture.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone, for your participation, and thank you, Maria, for a very compelling presentation. It's very exciting for me to see these projects, many of which I've only just glimpsed. So, of course, it's nice to see them more fully explained. I reflect back, as Rick did, of my earliest visits to Madrid, which were in the early 60s, actually. It was a Franco era, and it's been very interesting to see the post-Franco environment as, you know, the modern movement has basically filled in. And not only from Madrid, obviously. I think the last time you and I were actually together may have been in Medellin, I don't know, with Fernando. And looking at the great strides and advances that have been made in architecture, cross-cutting with much of what you've discussed. And I would just make an observation that I think you have managed to succeed in making constructive, for want of a better word, seams between those things that you do and the context in which they're in. And I think someone referred to this, or you did, in terms of accessibility, where the boundary is blurred, there's an interpenetration. And I think to me, it's a little bit of a hallmark. You see it in Bogota, you see it in the housing. So I think many of the issues intersect with that. In any case, thank you very, very much for the explanation. It's always obviously a pleasure to see and be with you. And I will credit the magic miracle of this digital technology, that while we are all kept separately, I find myself meeting up with people who otherwise I mightn't see at all, let alone in reality. So the silver linings do exist. Everyone, please join us tomorrow for the second Biennial lecture being delivered by Jack Travis. Jack Travis is a New York architect who's played a significant role in the diversification of the profession. I know Jack as a serious and sensitive person, and I'm proud to call him my friend. Jack established his eponymous office in 1985. He's taught at Parsons, the Parsons School of Design, Pratt Institute, and FIT, the Fashion Institute of Technology. Also, in the fall of 2014, Jack joined the faculty of the School of Visual Arts, SVA. His interests go beyond cultural content strategies to focus now on sustainable environmental design methodologies, alternative educational practices, including community design studios, and the entrance of more students of color into academia and the profession. The lecture is tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You can use, again, the same Zoom link you used today. We hope to see you then. We wish you a wonderful day, and as is now my want, for all of those listening in from the US, vote.
Thank you.
Vote. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you
You
all.
too.
Bye-bye. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Natalia.